Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this is the show where I review all the comics I've read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between. I had a pretty hefty haul this week, and before we jump in, I do have a Kickstarter going on for Rainbow Canvas. If you're a fan of WEBTOONS, you definitely should go check it out. It has original stories from your favorite BL and GL WEBTOONs, including our WEBTOON Slice of Life, so definitely go check that one out. Of course, at the end of the video, we talk about the viewer's pick of the week, so in the comments below, let me know your pick of the week for a chance to be featured on the episode. Now, let's jump into this week's comics, and there's some hefty books that came out this week and a lot to discuss. So number 12 for me is The Nasty issue 2. Issue 1 grabbed me enough to want to get issue 2. I like the idea of this slasher imaginary friend, but I feel like there's just a lot of characters they're trying to juggle, and for me, I haven't been able to get into the characters as much as I want to for a series like this, even though I think the concept's fun, and obviously they really poke fun at cinephiles, especially horror cinephiles, and I think that's an interesting concept, and it's a little different, and I like the art is not too gritty. It kind of has a nice style, but overall the characters for me are not doing it enough for me to want to pick up that next issue. So that is number 12, and I give that 2 stars. Now let's get into the main event, the big book of the week. Yes, it's kind of low. And that is The Amazing Spider-Man issue 25. I want to take a deep dive into this one. Now this is the issue, I almost want to say the penultimate issue to the actual big issue, right? It's a prelude to it, where next issue is going to be the big reveal of everything's going to change. It's the biggest event since the death of Gwen Stacy, and that the writer can't go to Comic-Cons because it's this big and people are going to be upset with him. They've been really building up this moment. Now, this is very much a Mary Jane issue where we find out what happened in the years where she was missing and Peter wasn't there. And we literally lead to the moment of Spider-Man and Mary Jane getting to reunite. And we learn some stuff. We learn that the kids are adopted. They're not biologically her kids. It's not... we do get to see Paul and Mary Jane get together, so we do know that they are a couple and they're a family because of this. And we see Mary Jane get her jackpot powers, and that was revealed in Mary Jane and Black Cat. So we're getting to see some information that you kind of could have pieced together yourself, or have already been revealed. The only big moment that happens in this issue would be the ending, where we get to see our villain tease who's gonna die, which is the Scarlet Woman. And if you can guess, the Scarlet Woman probably is Mary Jane. She has red hair, but also kind of feels like a red herring. It feels like a not a foreshadowing to maybe a different character. I still think maybe an interesting possibility would be if it's related to Scarlet Spider in some way. So maybe could be Hallows Eve. I don't really think that's gonna be that big of a deal. Or, you know, the only other Scarlet Spider character that was a woman that has showed up was way back in MC2 with Spider-Girl series, where we got to see Black Cat's daughter as the Scarlet Spider. If maybe it's connected to that, which I really don't think so, but with the main villain being such a minor character from Spider-Man, I think anything's possible. But they're really, really trying to convince you that Mary Jane's gonna die, which, you know, we'll see how that ends up turning out, that you just gave her superpowers to kill her off. I don't know. That doesn't seem to add up. But why is this book so low for me? You know, it's difficult because there's a big argument to be said that Spider-Man is not just his romance, right? It's not just his story with Mary Jane. And obviously Marvel doesn't want Mary Jane and Peter to be together. We kind of just have to come to a time to accept that. Which honestly, sure, I think we could accept that if Mary Jane kind of had a story outside of the romance. This issue really has to do with building anguish to Peter Parker, right? He's down on his luck. He has the Parker luck in all shapes and forms. There's really nothing going on besides his team up with Norman that's actually going well in his life. His friends hate him, his peers hate him, and now Mary Jane doesn't really want to be around him because she has her own family, and she's like, all right, Peter, you're in my past some reason. She really cares in the beginning, and now 4 years later, she kind of gives up on him. I guess I don't understand the point of why she can't be friendly with him. I don't understand where it's like, Peter, I can't talk to you. I don't know if they really added that up. I think she could be like, yeah, I moved on, but that doesn't mean we can't be friends. And I think that's the point where I'm frustrated with the romance, because it's so obvious that they're playing into the romance. Of course fans are gonna care, because that's what the story's about. If you didn't make the story about the romance or trying to rile up fans of the romance, then I wouldn't mind as much. If this was just more like the Mary Jane and Black Cat issue, where it's more about Mary Jane getting her powers, and even if Paul's related to that, Paul can still be a factor without it feeling like, oh man, we're gonna rile fans up for people who like the Mary Jane and Peter stuff. And that's kind of what this issue felt like, more than actually a story that's trying to be told that is strong for both Mary Jane and Peter. And I think that's what frustrates me about this one. It feels a little trolly. It feels a little teasy. It doesn't feel like a story that's purposeful for Spider-Man. And and I feel like obviously it's 25 issues later, we still, even with the biggest issue thus far, it still doesn't really feel like it progresses the story that much. I don't know the direction of Spider-Man, and I feel like that's the most frustrating part for Spider fans. So those are my opinions on that one. I don't know if Mary Jane's actually gonna die. I still think it's a red herring. Haha. That pun intended for that one. And I do think it's gonna be a different character, or something else big is gonna happen in the next issue. I don't see it adding up that Mary Jane would die, but find out at the end of the month what actually does end up happening. Now let's move on to number 10 for me, and that is Superman Lost, issue 3. I really like parts of this book. I really love the idea when Superman comes back and how Lois is dealing with that and just the anguish there. But anytime you actually get to the main concept of the Lost idea, I'm lost, and I'm not as invested in it. I think it's cool that we get to see Superman in a space adventure, but it's something we've seen before, and honestly recently. I didn't read the run, but I know Philip Kennedy Johnson's run did the same thing. He was in space. So we've seen this story before, even though this time, I guess he was kind of lost in space at that point too. The thing that I think really saves this is the art. I love the white costume. I think it contrasts really well with the darker surroundings. But I don't know if it gave me enough to say, oh, I need to follow this maxi series. It's pretty long. The stuff I like just hasn't been getting as much spotlight as I wanted it to. So giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 10. And I don't know if I gave Amazing Spider-Man a rating. That was 2 stars. Moving on to number 9, which is Stargirl, The Lost Children, issue 6. This issue, it's just kind of run-of-the-mill. There's nothing that's too surprising that happens, and there's a lot going on because there's a lot of characters you have to tackle, where we get to see the Lost Children fight Arrow Man. He's old, and they're like, we're youthful, we have friends, let's fight you. You're a villain because you're old, which kind of felt weird and maybe a little very surface level. And I think that's the thing that I wish kind of was heightened a little bit more here. Like, I like Stargirl as a character. I think it was a good culmination to her story, but overall it's a kind of forgettable story tying into a book that has been delayed for a little while, and it's even harder to even get into. And I like JSA, and I'm going to continue to read JSA, but I wish I had a little bit more momentum, especially if you're going to have tie-ins like this. So overall, giving that one 2.5 stars, and that is number 9. Moving on to number 8. And number 8 for me is Daredevil, issue 11. Another book that I feel like has lost a little steam. I say that every single time this book comes out, but I do want to see how it ends. But I like moments in here. I like Daredevil poking his eyes out, and that's kind of how he saves Elektra. There's definitely a lot of slow moments in this issue. I would say that's the height of the issue, but a lot of it is just filler to kind of get to the next point and the aftermath of the last battle. But there's not a lot of movement and not a lot of excitement, sadly. But the art's good. The action was good in this issue for the most part, but it's just not doing it for me as much as it did in the past. So overall, giving that 2.5 stars, and excited to see how this ends, but also interested to see a new layer and journey for Daredevil. Moving on to number 7, which is Spider-Gwen Shadow Clones, issue 3, which is actually the same writer as the new Silk series. And I'm having fun with this. I don't think it reinvents the wheel by any means, but I like the little character moments between the clones and how Gwen is realizing some stuff about herself because of the clones. There's some fun battles between her evil clones, and then we get to see the main villain show up in the end. Again, does it reinvent the wheel? No, and I still wish we would get a Spider-Gwen book that would actually progress her character, but if we're only getting adventures like this, I do think this is the better version of these adventures that we've got in the past couple of years with Spider-Gwen. I will say I wish the artwork was a little stronger. There's definitely some not weak, but there's lighter line work. I usually like heavier pencils and inks for that. But overall, it's an okay story. So I'm going to give this 3 stars, and that is number 7. Moving on to number 6, which is Ghostlore issue 1. A book I was really, really excited for, and I think does have potential, but doesn't really take its time to make us really love these characters. And I wanted the conflict even to be more present, and again, I keep using the word, but a little less surface level. It's about this priest and his rebel daughter, but she's just a rebel to be a rebel. The son you do learn a little bit more about, of why he's quiet and why he's distant, and now the priest's father and the daughter have to work together because the daughter kind of killed her family while she was driving. There's these ghosts. There's definitely more lore to be told, and that interests me. That did hook me, the overall plot, and I think they did a good job with that. I do think this artist, I love this artist. He's done stuff with, or they've done stuff with A Basket Full of Heads, which I really, really enjoyed, and they do a good job with horror. But I do feel like this was a little weaker than that. There's times where the facial expressions and the pencils felt a little rushed. But overall, it definitely gave me enough for issue 2 to see where this goes, and I hope those characters deepen as the series goes on. So giving that 3 stars, and that is number 6. Moving on to number 5, which is Silk issue 1. I was just talking about this. I will say the beginning of the book, I was a little worried. I was like, okay, she's this detective in LA. This feels like any character could be here. Why are they doing this? And I like the art a lot, though. It's like, oh, this feels different. Give it a shot. You're always, all comic fans are always like, I want something different from these characters. So I'm like, all right, let's give this a chance. And the ending really explains everything, where it's the villain from the last story, which love that. These miniseries have felt very disconnected, so I like that Silk's story is continuing from her previous volume, and we get to see that it's all in her head. She's trapped, which really plays a big part into her origins, the bunker. So I was like, okay, I think this book has a lot of potential. I think it dealt with her journalism side of stuff pretty nicely. So I liked it. I thought it had some good potential with this one. So overall, giving that, I think I gave that 3 stars. So that's number 5. Moving on to number 4, a book that was good, but I have some reservations for, and that's Green Lantern issue 1, a book I was super excited for. I'm a huge Carol Ferris fan, and I do like Hal Jordan a lot. And I think Hal was actually written pretty well here. I liked Hal. I like that he's grounded again. I like that he's on Earth. He's figuring out his life. He's a pilot again. Really goes back to basics with his character, which is the side of Green Lantern I like more than just the outright space adventures. And you get some teases of Sinestro. But the thing I don't love is kind of the similar complaint of what I had with Mary Jane, right? There's always this, and knowing Jeremy Adams and the stuff he's done in the past, I feel like there's more of a rhyme and reason for this one than maybe the Mary Jane and Peter side of the story. But obviously, just reading the first issue, I don't know that. But the point being is that Carol, as a character, I think always fights that she is a hero, she's a superhero, and she's also the love interest of Hal. And they really do use that pawn a lot of, okay, they're not together again, let's see how they get back together, because every Green Lantern series starts with them not being together, which is fine. I don't think they need to be together. Like, I would like to see it. I like their characters. I like when they're together. I think they're at their best when they're together. But let's say that's not the plan. That's fine. But when your story is still about them and their romance, it makes it hard, because it's just like, if I wanted a story that's not about their romance, then I would like to see Carol be Star Sapphire a little bit more. I want to see her journey, and it's hard because this is a Green Lantern book. It's a Hal Jordan book, so of course you want to see more of Hal. But if Carol's such a big presence, I don't love that they're doing the same thing with her. We've seen this narrative for both characters a lot without any like twist or turn here to be like, this is gonna be different. Again, this is just a first issue. Maybe they'll do that as issues go on, and I trust a writer that they will, because they've done that with previous characters. But that was a little frustrating to me as a big Carol fan. But I liked Hal here. I'm interested to see where it goes. The artwork was really well done, and we'll see where it ends up going. So overall, giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, which is Saga issue 64, and this issue, There's some interesting moments, character moments. It's a little bit of a slower issue, but I like the smaller moments with Squire, that he's kind of getting into this more evil place, that he's okay with killing people. And then we still have Hazel dealing with wanting to bring her dad back. And then we have Alana, I never know how to pronounce her name. She's trying to find a new job and a place for shelter for her family. So there's definitely a lot of moving parts here, which maybe could be stated there's too many moving parts. There's a lot of different stories. There's also two other characters that show up here. In two other arcs, so I wish there was a little bit more time to breathe, but the moments that do shine here are good character moments and good character progression. Obviously the art is always splendid and good for those character moments, so giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 3. Moving on to number 2, a book that always sneaks up on me of how much I've been enjoying it, and that is Phantom Road issue 3. I love this book. I love Jeff Lemire's writing, and I think the pacing is just really beautiful for this. So we don't even get to see our main characters here, and it's actually the FBI detective trying to figure out what's going on here, just like the rest of us. It's just like the rest of the audience. Like, we kind of have an idea what's going on. They give us enough information where it doesn't feel like they're dragging you along, but you're like, okay, I still want to know the greater picture, and we get to see it from this FBI's perspective, and then we see that maybe this woman has also gone through a similar situation as our main characters, and that the case is a little closer to home than she's spelling it out to be, and then she gets kidnapped. So you're like, okay, there's a lot of different layers happening here. I feel like I'm learning stuff with every passing issue that's very haunting, but also the art is very blank, which really works for this book. I'm just really sucked in, and I don't know what I'm sucked into, and that's the feeling I like about this book, where I'm like, oh, it's so much. It's an air of mystery what this book's even about, but they just give you enough. So overall, giving that 4 stars, and that is number 2. Moving on to number 1, which is Second Coming Trinity issue 2, a book that really never disappoints me. I love this book, and it's satire on religion, and this issue does a beautiful job at that. By still progressing the story, you get a little moments of, okay, there's this planet called Trinity. The book, this volume's called Trinity, so I'm sure it's gonna connect there. The superhero's baby, Sunstone, I think his name is Sunstone. His baby gets powers, it starts to fly. But the thing that I really liked about this issue is more God's character. So in the beginning, he's just this famous celebrity in heaven, and he even goes to the atheists who still don't believe in God, even though they literally are talking to him, and he's like, oh, I like the atheists, I like their mind frame, but he's like, I gotta go back to Earth and kind of figure out what my feelings are and just kind of step away from the spotlight. And he goes to this art museum, and he kind of talks about the golden calf, and why he was angry was not because he was a narcissist saying that you can't have another God, but because of what it did to art. And I thought that was a very interesting commentary, and that's what this book does so well, is just dissecting things like that and making it funny. You're laughing, but also being like, wait, you're right. That's an interesting concept that you just kind of tackled there. So it tells the bigger concepts of life and something that you could dig into while still making you laugh really hard, because God just hijack the date of a superhero and his wife. So it's just such a fun book, and I always look forward to reading it, and it's just, even when the story feels like so outside of the main plot, I'm having fun with the slice of life aspect of this book. So overall, giving that 4.5 stars. The artwork is always fun, the facial expressions are great. Definitely go check out Second Coming if you're not. So let me know in the comments below what your pick of the week was. Last week's pick of the week was Joe Fixit, and here are some comments about that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.